It doesn't matter, the mics are working. Go ahead, Amanda,
that's
just
true.
do your final.
Amanda Zeller, assistant principal at the high school.
Boston College student body president.
Thank you. Thank you. I just realized as we were doing that it didn't really matter because I know who everybody is, but that's fine. Let's just start with a laugh and just keep moving on. All right.
Party games with Holly Pepper.
That's the way we roll.
These meetings, so maybe it's.
Call to order, check. Okay. I need to appoint a process observer. Would there be anyone willing to do that? Raise your hand if you're so
I'll do
willing.
it.
Cindy is doing that, great. And agenda adjustments, I believe you had one?
Yes, Tim was just going to briefly talk about the youth risk behavior survey, so if we could put that under discussion. We had got an email yesterday, I believe it was, asking about our participation for the spring of 2023, so we thought we'd put it on the table tonight and then have a formal discussion next month.
Great, thank you.
Where on the agenda do you want it? It could be the last discussion item.
Correct. Okay. Nominations, are there any other agenda adjustments or any other suggestions? Okay, so nominations, resignations, retirements, and correspondence.
We have none.
0, great, thank you. I need to move to approval of the minutes. So, the first set of minutes that we are looking at is the Hollis Brookline Cooperative School Board minutes of September 21st, 2022. The following amendments were offered. Page 5, line 31, replace address with addressed. And page 7, line 34, replace involve with involved. I need a motion to accept as amended. Moved by Tom, seconded by Beth. I think we were all here, so all in favor? 700. And then we have non-public minutes from September 21st, 2022. I need a motion to accept as presented. Moved by Tom, seconded by Beth. Put them there. Any comments? Seeing none. All in favor? 7-0. Yeah, I think you were there. 0-0. Okay. So at this point, we have advertised public input starting at 6:10. We're at 6:08, so we can begin public input. Anybody who comes in the next half an hour would be able to speak because that's the new law that we're following. We ask the public to state their name and address for the record, and that they understand that this is not intended to be a back and forth discussion. And we give each member of the public 3 minutes. Is there any public here? Okay, so I'm opening the floor for public discussion at 6:08 p.m. And seeing none, I'm going to close the floor at 6:08 p.m. as well. Again, with the caveat that if someone were to come in by, since we said 6:10, 6:40, if somebody comes in by 6:40, they would be allowed to speak when we could fit them in.
You say you're not good at math.
I know, I did that math really fast. 10 plus 30. Oh, look at me. Okay, so moving on. So in our board packet, we have our principal and athletic reports. So I'm going to start with the athletic report, please. And I think that was submitted by Mr. Bumpus, but he is not present. So I assume we are going to be hearing from Mr. Grisone on that. Okay, thank you so much.
Yep, I'll take that. Our fall sports, everyone is wrapping up regular seasons. Our football team will wrap things up this coming weekend. We have our playoffs ahead for girls soccer, boys soccer, girls volleyball, and we have our cross-country state meet in about 50 minutes. Our girls field hockey team will be hosting their first playoff game. Now, the first time they've hosted a playoff game, Brian and I went back, and I think it was 15 years. So,
Wow,
pretty big accomplishment.
that's fantastic.
Yeah, so they're hosting up there
Well,
under the lights, 7
congratulations
p.m.
to them.
Yeah, congratulations to those guys. And the golf team took part in the state championship last week, the 13th. And the unified soccer team took home a big win against our boys varsity team on the turf field last week.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yes.
We are on.
Yeah, I just,
So all
Thank you.
sports fall seasons are wrapping up, but several of them are in days and weeks. So good luck to all those teams.
Mr. Wright, did you want to do the middle school?
I can. Okay, sure. Since you are the coach.
Since you're actively involved in the middle school sports, we'd like to hear how they're doing.
Sure.
Yeah, and we are live. Just
Yes,
Sounds good.
cameras are on again.
Fall sports season at Hbms has been full of success and accomplishments. Both boys and girls teams, I think the girls team finished first place in the regular season. The boys team has taken second place. So both teams will host at least first round next week. The girls have their first playoff game on Friday, and the boys have their first playoff game next Monday. This past weekend, the cross-country team held their first ever invitational on campus with 4 teams total. Great day of running for all. I believe our assistant superintendent was there helping out too. A special thanks to all the parent volunteers who made the day possible. Both boys and girls teams will be competing in the Tri-County League Championship on Saturday, 15th, which I guess was this past Saturday. The presentation of Mary and Hudson, while the rest of the teams will begin their playoff runs during the week of October 24th. Winter sports are going to start up the first week of November. And that's all I got for middle school sports.
Great. So on to, is there any questions for the athletics report?
No, I did notice that there's a congratulations for Becky, so I wanted to at least mention that we congratulate her.
Coach Belfour just took home her 450th win.
That's excellent. And some money,
Congratulations to her and her teams.
and some food was collected for NH Tackles Hunger.
Yeah, New
which is
Hampshire
great.
Tackles Hunger, there's a table set up in the back lobby right now, full of canned goods, and that'll be something that we'll be donating in the coming weeks.
Excellent.
Yep.
Do you know if there have been any updates since Brian wrote this, as far as filling positions?
I don't think as far as filling, like finalized filling them, but there's been progress made in some of the position application processes.
Are there any other questions on the athletic report? Congratulations to all the teams, middle school, high school, all of them, whether they're in playoffs or not. The experience is what matters, according to me. Kumbaya.
So, moving on to the principal's report, I wanted to highlight a couple items which I did hand out the school profile. It is part of the board packet. And if we could just take a look at that, I just want to make a couple highlights there. If you head to our the second page, we have all of our standardized test scores there for our school day SATs. We're once again well above the New Hampshire state average, as well as the U.S. and international test takers average. The GPAs, you can see the distribution of GPAs. That's last year's graduating class, the class of 2022. And our AP scores, you can see, had a nice rebound from what I will call the COVID year. So the 2022 scores, you can see we had 81% of our students scoring 3 or higher. We have listed there our National Merit Scholarship finalists, and within my report this month I identified we had 4 commended students as well this year as our 2 National Merit semifinalists that we highlighted last month. So we had 4 semifinalists, we had 2 semifinalists and 4 commended students this year. Last year, you can see we had 3 semifinalists and 2 commended students. So our students continue to excel on the national landscape.
Tim, before you move ahead, do we monitor ACT results too?
We do not.
I saw an article today that the ACT scores nationally are way down. I was curious if we had anything on that. They also said that there was also an article, it wasn't linked to it, but it seems similar, that the colleges that have made testing optional are running into real difficulty in fairness of the application process.
I would imagine, yeah.
Because they rely so heavily on that, so I was curious whether we have had any feedback that our strategies are helping, hurting, anything like that?
Well, if you look at the last page and you look at, the schools that our students are being accepted to, not only is the list extensive, we have Dartmouth on there, the high caliber schools are represented there as well as, the volume of schools too. So I think we continue to do well on
I
the
just didn't
on
know
the
if any
front.
of the, it sounds like the school day testing is working out really well. I wasn't expecting people to be complaining. I was wondering if that seems to be a positive strategy for our students in general.
I think it is. I think the concept of using the SATs as the state test not only bodes well for us as a school because it gains the buy-in for our college-bound students to, to perform at their best for the assessment. But I think also leveling the playing field, making sure that all kids have access to the test during a school day is obviously, the idea of what we're trying to do as well. So. I don't know if that answers your question, but.
One of the concerns we've always had is that standardized testing that have no stakes
Right.
don't necessarily get, they don't necessarily get the participation quality
Mhm.
that we're hoping for. And now the SATs are our state reporting tests as
Yep.
well, is that correct?
That's
Yeah.
right.
Yep.
Have we seen that it has impacted our positioning in the state?
I think we continue to perform above the state average as we had prior, but I think the volume of students that are taking it would be higher, and then also in addition to that, the fact that it is our state test scores compared to kneecaps, right? Kneecaps prior.
Yep.
I think that without looking at the data in front of me,
Yep.
I would assume that, we continue to perform above state averages because everybody's still playing on the same playing field.
Well, the other
Everybody
po-
still was facing that same battle of getting students to perform on the state test that there may not have been the buy-in for.
But the use of the SAT for the state test is an option, that's not the default test, is it?
Yes.
It
Is-
is.
Oh,
Well,
it is now, the
yep.
SAT is the
Yep.
default.
Yeah,
test.
and not many states do it that way, so in some ways, when you look at the SAT scores in New Hampshire, you know that almost every kid who has
Yeah.
taken them. So, just speaking personally, with test scores being optional across the country, the SAT has become something that not every kid is taking 3, 4, 5, as many times, because there's just not as much pressure to apply with that SAT. For most schools, it's optional right now. And the ACT is optional as well, and our school students have never really taken. So our ACT scores would be so sporadic, because only a handful of kids really take it, right? Even when the test was required, I don't think not many of them took it, or took it in a couple times. I know these are just from one day, but I don't know what point I'm making, but I thought I got
I'm
there.
just trying to figure out the context in which to view these results, because it seems like we've got a different structure around SAT testing, and I'm trying to figure out how to frame the results in the context.
Well, you do. So, right, you're looking at 200 students taking it rather than any other administration. You might have 5 kids taking it. You might have 100 students taking it. So it's really, you're not doing apples and apples comparison when you look at the average performance of the students on the assessment. And that's why it's important in here that it's identified as the school day administration, because that means that for the most part, all 200 students took it. If you were to compare that to an isolated group, you're going to see very different things. But to your point, has this assisted those students who were already going to be taking the SAT on their own? Yeah, because it gave them an opportunity to take it without having to pay for it, without having to take up a Saturday or whatever. So they're getting that additional practice, if you will.
And also for the juniors in high school, to have, they're taking the SAT, to not have that other state test happening at the same time. I mean, I think when our kids were seniors of high school, there was the SAT multiple times, if you took the ACT, and then you took all the state testing as well. I mean, the kids were being tested up the wazoo
And
in
AP
11th
tests.
grade. And then AP tests. It was just, so it was a really good move on the state's part and on the educators in the state who pushed for that.
Thank you, Andy.
Yeah, thanks, Andy. Yeah. The other thing, too, is if someone were to say, take this profile and compare SAT scores from before this, right? Because this profile's been the same for many years, going back to, say, like 2010 or something, those SAT scores weren't from one moment. They were from kids taking them multiple times and prepping for them. So this is a one-time
School day.
in March, also in March, and it's important for folks out there to understand that that's in March. So some of our kids haven't even finished Algebra 2 when they're taking it in March, or haven't even finished the math, or whatever it is. So there's a lot to be said for these being clearer scores to compare over years, and cleaner data.
Cleaner data.
I would think so. Oh my God, I just said data.
Gina, didn't you do a comparison last year or 2 years? I remember you pulling some SAT scores and looking at some of that year-by-year comparison.
Yeah, so I just look at the school day administration, and I don't really pool. I have access to, and I look, and I'm sort of curious at the differences. But I think it's important to look at school day administration, compare it to school day, and not try to mingle it with others. But, yeah.
Thanks, Tim. Any other questions on the profile? Did you have more you wanted to cover on the profile? Because we interrupted you.
Not the profile, nope. But I was going to just continue on with the principal's report before we move into program studies and
Yeah, well, that's in
we'll probably
discussion. So, and we want to do
whatever makes
principal's
more
report,
sense.
we want to do Patrick's report, we want to do Austin's report. Yep.
Okay, all right. So I just wanted to recognize, we had some performing arts accomplishment recognitions. We had 14 students accepted into let's see, 14 arts choir students, all New England Choral Festival at Plymouth State University, as well as a second festival, the Monadnock Valley Music Festival. So according to Mr. Barbosa, this is more than half of our honors choirs students, and tying a record that we set back in 2016. So the performing arts, not only the numbers are kind of rebounding, but we're again back where we were in 2016 with the highest number of students accepted into this program. So congrats to Mr. Barbosa and our music department for all these awesome accomplishments. I just have a couple dates I wanted to mention. We have the NHS induction ceremony scheduled for next week. We have our Veterans Day Assembly, which we're coordinating with Mr. West's Assembly on that Thursday, the 10th, the right before the holiday. And then we have our parent-teacher conferences on the usual evenings, the Thursday prior to Thanksgiving, and then that Monday, the week of Thanksgiving. So, and I'm open to any questions or comments anyone has on the report.
Sure, ma'am. I just wanted to answer Tom's question quickly on the coaches. We have, for winter coaching, all of the middle schools have been filled and the high school. The only ones I don't know for sure are ski head team, head coach, and indoor track, but the other ones have been filled.
And I think
For winter.
those two are the ones I was referring to. I think there's progress being made.
Right, and they're still listed as, yeah, so that's good. Good. Great, thanks, Linda.
Welcome.
Any questions for Tim on the principal's report, on his high school principal's report? Congratulations to all those students
Yep.
who are doing a great job representing us and, performing arts, and also those Scott and Celia and Ava and John for their commended thing. I didn't try their last names, although I do know Anna's last name is Shizitsky. Okay. Patrick?
So this year we've tried to build in a little bit more positive reinforcement for positive choices by students. So we came up with the Hbms Nightly Code of Honor. This is just to recognize students for making positive choices, focus of being empathetic, being helpful, being kind, And then if a teacher witnesses a student doing this, the teacher can give over a code of honor ticket where they walk down to the main office, turn it in, and hopefully have a conversation with somebody in the main office about that to, again, positively reinforce the positive choice. And during our monthly community meetings, we pull out some of those student names and give out some small prizes to students and just recognize them in front of the entire student body. And so far, it seems to be well received by everybody in the building. We have our monthly community meeting on Friday. It seems like students get excited for those types of assemblies again. It's nice to be able to host those. Red Ribbon Week next week. This year's theme is Celebrate Life, Live Drug-Free. The theme is to call action to speak out in support of healthy choices. It also serves as a reminder that we are all empowered with shaping the communities around us through positivity, bravery, and strength. We're going to have daily dress-up themes next week. And I think we're going to do our big red ribbon picture out back from last year. We have a student that has a drone that he'll be taking the picture again this year. Lots of things going on in the library this year. We have our 25 plus book club challenge already started with a number of students taking that on, and our International Dot Day. The 25 plus book challenge is just for any students that read more than 25 books during the school year. They get the option, or they get a reward for a lunch of their choice at the end of the year. I think last year we had about 15 students complete the 25 plus book challenge. And we're right around that same number as of right now, but we're hopeful that we'll get more students engaged. And an International Dot Day is just something that we do every year to celebrate creativity, courage, and collaboration. Students and staff were given the book to read by Peter H. Reynolds called The Dot, and that was during Rock. And those are just some samples of, actually you guys can see them right out there. Just the dots that some students made. Parent-teacher conferences, I'm sorry for the typo, that should be November 7th and November 15th. We're going to hold after-school parent conferences in person this year. Similar format to the high school. We're actually going to do them individual teachers instead of the team-based conferences, just to hopefully have more of a conference-style conversation between parents and teachers. Parents who are not able to schedule one of the times during those after-school times can set up meetings with teachers during their common planning time. We're going to be offering a series of parent information nights this year. The first one is going to be November 9th on executive functioning. Our new director of student services here at the middle school, Catherine Ransom, who's been a great addition to the building, is putting this one on and going to talk to parents about just defining skills of executive functioning, and look to offer, or she's going to be offering some tools to support those skills not only at school but at home as well. We have our Veterans Day Assembly that Mr. Grisone just mentioned. We're welcoming veterans to start at 7:30 a.m. for some breakfast treats and some coffee. PTSA will be helping out with that. Our student council will be helping out. The chorus and band will be performing. Some poems will be shared, and we have a couple of keynote speakers. We are still accepting applications for our technology education position, so if anybody knows of anybody, please encourage them to apply. And then there's some important upcoming dates below. I did not include a Washington, D.C. update. I apologize for that, but as of right now, we have 175 students registered out of the 200 eighth graders. We have more to come because there's been a huge, over $5,000 of scholarship donations. So we're reaching out to the families and students that haven't registered yet to kind of see if there is some financial support need there. But that's a pretty good number for just 2 weeks of registration.
How many do you have? I'm sorry.
175 registered
Out of 200?
out of 200.
That's great.
That's great.
And you said there's been $5,000 in additional donations given since the beginning of this year?
Yes.
That's fantastic.
We had
That's
2
great
full
news.
scholarship donations from families of 8th grade students.
That's terrific.
Yep.
That's really good news.
And we are going to be hosting a dance in December, and all of those proceeds will go towards the DC trip, either to hopefully lower the cost for all students or just add more scholarships for students.
Excellent. That's great news. Are there any other questions on Patrick's report? Well, I always feel like I have chalk, so. No, actually, it looks great. I mean, I think some of these things, the initiatives of the Nightly Code of Honor, that's excellent, and all these different creative things to get kids engaged, it's just wonderful to see. Lovely.
Thank you.
Okay, so at this point, I'd like to move to the student report, right? Is that what I said I was doing? Okay. So that would be Austin and Gracie. Gracie entered a couple minutes ago, 6:28. That's for the, don't worry, Gracie, it's okay. It's just for the, it's for the secretary. She's watching. Go ahead, Austin.
As of right now, student council, we just finished up with our Old Homes Days fundraiser, so we don't have anything we're really working on besides our Spirit Week, because we are trying to reconstruct that to gather more student input, because as of right now, the skits and dances weren't a huge, people weren't loving it, but we're trying to get a lot of people involved now. And our Halloween week is coming up next week, and we have dances and our Halloween assembly coming up on Friday for that.
Excellent. Did you have something else to add, Grace?
Juniors are in charge of the Halloween assembly, and so we've come up with Spirit Days, which we got approved for the whole week. And then we have an assembly plan, which we have our MCs for, and we have everything else ready, so that should go pretty smoothly, so.
Excellent. Excellent. And kids can still wear costumes?
Yes, there's a costume contest at the assembly, so.
Excellent news. Thank you very much. You're welcome to stay and give us more input as we go through, or maybe after we talk about program of studies, you can leave. Okay. But I'd like you to be here for the program of studies conversation. That would be, if that's okay with everybody else. Okay. All right. So, done with principals and athletic reports? Check. Great. Moving on, we have the discussion section of our evening, and we are going to move on to the SAU 41 Anti-Discrimination Plan. Who's talking about that?
Okay, so included in your packet is the anti-discrimination plan for the district. This was, you can see that there's a bit of a trend here with Concord passing some laws that require policies and plans to go along with them. So this was a requirement to go along with some of our updates to our various anti-discrimination policies. So this plan is one single document that has a lot of, sort of pulls together all the policies that we have in our district that address the various components or pieces of our of what we are not going to be doing. And it really identifies who to go to if there's a concern and with various pieces, things that you might come across. So it's really just, it's not so long, but it's a healthy document, 15 pages or so. So I wanted to put it out there for you to review, take some time, and potentially vote on it next month.
I was going to say this requires a vote of the board. And is this one of those things where once we vote on this plan, the only time we'll vote again is if it's changes?
Changed,
Or
yes.
is it something we have to vote on every year?
No, only changes, but this essentially just identifies all of our policies. So as each of the policies that are in here change, then the plan changes as well. So this was, it was identified that we needed to have a plan, but unlike some of the other laws that have passed, it really didn't say what that plan needed to look like or what it needed to encompass. So this is, doing our best job of trying to understand and trying to pull together what made sense.
Who put it together? Was it just you, or was there a committee?
Our compliance and communication specialist helped me with it, and I worked with HR and our attorney's office. School Board Association did not have a sample one. There aren't very many districts that have one in place because it was a recent law passed last year.
Does anyone have any other questions on this?
I think it's very well done.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And does anyone else have questions?
How and when will this be distributed, if at all, or is it just?
Posted on our website.
Is there any requirement in statute that any portion of this be proactively?
Yeah, so some of the policies are, we are required to share them with both faculty and families every year, and so those are part of the handbooks.
Might this be useful to be essentially an addition and a framework for that distribution?
It could be. We'll have to take a look at that.
Doing so?
It might get a little clunky because this refers to a policy. It might pull an excerpt out but then I'm required to provide some of these as policies in their entirety. So it might just get a little bit clunky. And because this is a discrimination plan for the entire SAU, I don't have live links because we have 3 different policies for our 3 different districts. So we certainly can push it out. We are, in terms of training for our faculty and staff, we have our annual trainings that we're required to do. I think it's also important to take a look at the policies that either the ones that are just part of the staff handbook or all of the board policies that everyone's required to follow. But we're looking into ways to incorporate some of that into the mandatory trainings to kind of guide that and ensure that we're making everyone aware of everything that they need to be aware of. This could be part of that.
It's comprehensive, but it seems very well constructed.
Yeah.
And as you said, in introducing it ties things together. I think it would be to the SAU's benefit to have this very visible so that before somebody asks a question, they have this might create that. So if the website's going to be the primary place to have it, there could be
front and
a
center.
prominent button or live link on essentially every landing page that someone's likely to start at.
That's a good idea. I had an idea and it just popped out of my mind.
And even if you're not handing it out, if you can make reference to it in the context of the stuff you do
Sure.
have to distribute.
Yep. And we can put live links in those linking to this. But what I was going to say is another component of this, if you recall last year, I brought forward AC-E, not a policy, but it is one document that identifies, you go to this person for this, you go to this person for this. So it's really just sort of helping.
It's almost like a flow chart.
Right, because we have so many different policies and you can get lost in the policy manual, but it's like, this is the go-to of what do I need to know? Who do I need to talk to? So.
Thank you.
So my question is, does this, in all of your work that you pulled this together, does this trigger some policy work that have we?
No,
are
so
we all updated on those policies?
Yes, so
Right.
all of these discrimination and anti-discrimination policies we've been doing the work.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I've been on
Yeah.
the policy committee, but I just wanted to make sure. Student handbook work, will this trigger more work on the student handbook, or where those two, this document's married to the handbook pretty well?
So the handbooks and the staff handbooks are done. It's a favorite activity at the end of
Summer
June.
work. Yeah, reason why.
And they go through page by page and make sure whatever policy has been passed in the school year, that's updated. But of course, if we pass something July 1st,
Well, yeah, of
it's
course.
going to be out of date immediately.
Right.
But yeah, no, we do look at that every year.
Okay, and my other question was, does it have to be posted? But it is going to be posted.
Yeah.
Excellent, terrific. Any other questions on that? So next month, you're going to need a vote from us?
Yes, please. Yep.
Okay. Let's remember that then. No. Okay. High school program of studies, I think that goes back to Mr. Grisone.
It does. I'm going to pass the buck to my colleague, Mrs. Zeller, who
I
will
figured it might be
review
Mr.
within the packet. I think it made it in the packet.
It did.
The highlighted changes, the page looks like 24, has the kind of table of contents of the highlighted changes. So, and then the changes, a little bit different format than last year. Hopefully it's a little easier to follow, are all highlighted in yellow. So, pass it over to Mrs. Zeller.
There aren't any massive changes. I'd say the biggest comes under probably the physical education, which you've already discussed, and that was the new strength and conditioning course. But they're structured in the list here in the order they appear in the program of studies. So if you're looking for the next change, just keep turning pages until you see yellow, or scrolling down until you see yellow. One thing that did need updating, and it came up in several different contexts, and that's the Latin honors language, to make sure it truly aligns with what we decided to change when we changed away from ranking in the top 10, and so we made sure that language fit and had been tailored to reflect the change we wanted to make for our academic achievement recognition. So we tightened that up a little bit, and we made sure it was in alignment with conversations about policy regarding enrollment and full-time status. So we need to make sure all those things lined up. The next section that comes under one of the headings is career exploration. That's where we do things like work study and ELOs, which are extended learning opportunities. And we updated our basic ELO offering. It used to be called career opportunities, something else, and we fit it into what we've been using now, which is Dr. Don Bro oversees our extended learning opportunities, and it's a very rich opportunity for students. And so we wanted to make sure it was something they could access more than once. They could apply to earn credit in different ways. So the language makes it more flexible and more encompassing, and students can do more than one of those without it looking like they're just doing random things that have the word work or career in it. It unifies a little bit of that approach. We think that's a good idea for kids to have these outside learning opportunities that feel like they're more ingrained in their academic program instead of just random offerings. So that was the attempt there to pull it in line with what students really want to do. We have the new physical education course, Intro to Strength and Conditioning. If you've been anywhere near the back of our building this year, our gym is alive and well, and our PE classes are high energy. The staff that are leading them are making the gym kind of a hub, a center of activity. We have groups of kids that eat lunch with PE teachers. We have kids who want to go during their study and work with the coaches that are teachers, and that whole back area is just kind of alive. It's really neat. Now that my office is up there, I get to see it a lot. It's a really great view. I feel like students are re-engaging in great ways in our PE program, so I think this new course is going to be a good thing. I think we have students who want to make that more ingrained in part of their day, so I think this offering is going to speak to some of that. Social studies, most of the changes here, they're really updates according to what the state has asked us to incorporate into our social studies education program. The citizenship test is not new, but this is the first year in which we're having our juniors take this as part of their civics program. They have to pass the U.S. citizenship test with a 70%. They can take it more than once until they reach that 70%. And so our civics teachers are working quite arduously to make sure that this is an authentic and good implementation of that new piece. Another new piece that was fairly recent was needing personal finance instruction. And the good thing is it works right into our economics course. So we have a nice pair of courses that support these new things that the state has asked us to verify are part of our graduation requirements. And they're right there, easy to incorporate and very authentic in how we're doing it, which I think is the hallmark of how to do these well, is make it authentic as much as you can. So the personal finance piece is worked in there. One of our courses, Human Geography, was very popular for a while, but it was very much tied to a staff member who is no longer in the department. And so we saw the popularity of that course just take a dive. And knowing what we want to do for class sizes and elective offerings for students, we've taken that off of our social studies menu. Students seem pretty happy with what remains. I don't think there's going to be an outcry for that course. If there were, I think we'd reconsider bringing it back, but right now it doesn't seem essential. Student services, we've shifted a little to use the NEC program, and so we made sure that was reflected in our student services description. We consulted with the people who are running that program and implementing it at the school to make sure that language was accurate and up to date for the programming that we're offering those particular students. So that's been updated in our student services section. And visual and performing arts probably has our biggest question. A shift we're proposing based on the music instruction, choir and band. And that is a shift from an every other day approach to music education and those who want to participate in it to a full credit, all year long, meets every day course for band and choir. We discussed all aspects of what this means. What does it do to student schedules? Does it limit students to choosing one music versus the other? Will we cause one program to shrink and the other program to grow if they have to make that choice? Will we limit students' opportunities to have a study in their schedule and balance their day? And after lots of discussion, this seemed to be what we wanted to pursue, and that was allowing students to earn a full credit and attend a music ensemble of their choice every day. Visual arts we always come across the idea that there's a bit of a bottleneck. For years, it was fundamentals. Everyone had to take fundamentals before they could take another art elective, and our art teachers have very nicely opened that up over the past couple of years, and this year they added sculpture, which used to be called 3D design and sculpture, really taken it just to sculpture. If you've been, I want to say university programs have done this right recently, and that's these cardboard sculptures. Has anyone seen one of these displays? It's the going thing in art classes. It's very hands-on, very constructive, and so this is the direction that our art program wanted to move in, was stuff like that would excite students and have a high display quality, so that art could be participatory, not just for those who are in the class, but for those who can now see what the class has made. You can put it on display. So that was quite appealing to remove that prerequisite from that class to allow students to take now ceramics, digital photography, and fundamentals without taking any other class first. Those are your entry-level classes that don't require a prerequisite. And I like the option to open up art to a lot of students with a lot of different desires as to what they're doing in their artwork. I think, when we removed painting too, it was undersubscribed and those student needs were met in other art electives. A lot of students who, if they couldn't fit painting 2 in the schedule, there were plenty of other options that they wanted to engage in on an artistic level, so it just didn't feel like it was holding the right kind of space.
Great.
I think that's the overview of everything.
Thank you, Amanda. Question? In our civics, now that we're required to teach the U.S. citizenship, I'm assuming we were teaching a lot of that stuff, but have we had to add anything?
Only the
curriculum-wise or
format of the
change it?
assessment, really. That's the only addition, is to make it match the U.S. citizenship test so that we can show they passed it with 70% proficiency. They taught all of those things. There was all embedded. It just needed that assessment piece that we could say, yes, yeah, they got that 70%.
Okay.
Yeah.
So have we given it yet, or no? Not
I don't believe so.
Semester?
No, they're still pulling together for the semester. We're about halfway through the semester, so we have time.
And just another thing to consider about that, though, is that we will need to have all of our students test, regardless if they take it on VLEX or they transfer in.
Oh, everybody.
So this is a mandatory upload to the state upon graduation. So we will have to find everybody.
It's like our ICT portfolio,
Yeah.
where you get a half credit for it, but you do it in multiple venues.
Yeah, and I know I TA for Mr. Duval, and every quiz I give them, he has 4 bonus points that are part of the citizenship test. So they are constantly, they're being exposed to it.
Oh,
And each
interesting.
one is different, so I haven't given them the same question twice. And this happens for every, I don't know about Mr. I think it's Caulfield, but for Duval's classes, I know they always see it, and he constantly is asking them about it.
Oh, great, thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions on program of studies? Okay, we've got Kate.
So, again, the citizenship, ultimately when they're tested, and students are tested, they're taking the whole 128 question test at once?
I don't think, have we landed on that as the decision? I think so.
And if students don't make that 70%, I know they can retest. Will they be required to retest the entire test, or will it be segmented where they can just do portions?
Gina's dying to answer.
That is a really good question that we have asked the state multiple times and have been given every answer but the answer to the question asked. So my assumption, and this is how I'd like to go, and I've sort of shared my thoughts with the social studies department, we are competency-based state, so we are going to pass the competencies, and if there's an area that we need to retest, then we will retest that portion.
Awesome. My
Until we're
understanding is that
told
is
not to.
possible, so.
Yeah, but there is zero clear guidance in the multiple TAs that have come out from the state.
Gotcha.
So,
Great, good to know.
yeah.
And I had a quick question about the ELO language. And it says, in that section, it says about.
Oh, that's good language, because I can tell you we've switched it a little bit.
Oh, okay.
This is, yeah.
The about
Yeah.
half credit?
Yeah, we flipped it. We flipped it to say that a half credit is about this many hours. Yeah, that was made about 5 minutes after he hit send on the packet, yeah. So you are correct, good eyes, and we got it, yeah.
Beth, did you have a question?
Yeah, it was just a quick clarifying question. With concert choir and jazz choir going to a year, right, that at daily full credit, that's
matching what honors choir is now already, correct? Like honors choir is
Uh,
a credit and
I don't believe so, but I want to pull out the old one to double check.
No, I believe it's every other day, so you could take honors choir and honors jazz choir. So
Yeah.
you could end up with a full credit.
But it's taking two.
But it's two separate courses, so you could opt to take one or the other and have a half credit.
that's what I was wondering, and maybe I'm misunderstanding, right, but honors choir is listed as a full credit in here, but it's not highlighted, so that's why I was just curious if we're changing just two of the choirs and not that one, or if it's to match.
So those ones that we're proposing switching from half-day to full-day that's not the honors
Correct.
upper level.
Yeah.
These are often underclassmen
Yep.
taking it with only the option of every other day. So what can happen is a student is boxed into, well, if they only want to take, let's say, jazz band, and they're forced into a study hall the other day because there's not another every other day offering, and oftentimes that half a study is not sufficient, so then you're taking a study into half, and that's not ideal either. So you don't, so for jazz band and concert band, those are often different students, and being younger students, the concept was bolstering the offering, and these are often kids who want to be there, and then on the other day, they're just taking a study hall anyway, so it should really strengthen the offering in the program.
No, that makes sense.
And then
One
for,
or the other, but not both.
Well, they could do both if they had the room for it.
They could take 2 periods.
I suppose you
You're
could.
scheduling it so that someone can take both?
Yeah, so the way it was explained to me was that there's not a lot of overlap for the bands, but there is for the choirs. The choirs is often the same kids taking half a credit one day, and then they're taking the other half a credit the other day, and it plays off of each other. So the concept would be within the concert choir, it's the same kids that show up one day and then the next, and really the curricula are married to begin with. So the concert choir would potentially absorb the jazz choir, and for the band, it would likely end up being 2 separate options, because oftentimes in the band there's different ensembles that require different instruments.
So the non-honors level is only one choir course?
It would be a 1 credit course, and it bolsters the middle. Basically, it takes the concert choir or band that used to be every other day.
Yeah, no, I understand.
Yeah, but the attempt is to bring more kids to that level because they can earn credit and they don't have this wasted day in between that a lot of them want.
There isn't a full credit, there aren't 2 separate full credit
It
choir
looks like there
classes.
are 2,
Yeah, there are.
2 in the.
Honors
concert-
is listed as a credit.
The anticipation will be that students will take concert choir, because within it, they're getting the jazz choir education as well.
So why are you offering the other one?
Because at this time, it's offered as 2.5s, so to remove that
No, it's not. The honors was 1. Honors was 1 last year.
I did just
Yeah.
figure that out by looking at my own kid's schedule, I guess I could have.
Yeah, honors jazz and honors choir and honors jazz band were both a full credit, so we are offering an additional full credit course.
I'm sorry, I think I misunderstood the question.
Yeah.
You're talking about honors, or the 2 courses that were
Not honors.
not honors, yeah.
The regular one,
Mhm.
you said that the regular choir is basically absorbing the jazz choir,
The concert choir and the jazz choir, yes.
but you're still offering a full credit concert choir and a full credit jazz choir?
That's correct. They're both going from a .5 to a 1.0 offering.
Then where's the absorption part of it?
Because likely it'll be the same kids, and the anticipation will be that the students will end up taking concert choir and not taking jazz choir, because within concert choir as a full credit, they'll receive the jazz
And
choir.
why offer jazz choir as a full
And that's,
credit course?
we could absolutely remove it, We felt like this year, similar to the conversation we had in the spring with personal fitness and say strength and conditioning, leave it, see if it populates, if students are signing up for both, then we wanted to at least offer it. And if not, then, you know, like human geography, if it's undersubscribed, then it would come off in the following year.
So this is a 2-year concept. The concept is this year you're going to offer concert choir and jazz choir. See what the numbers are.
Both as full credit
See so these will definitely be offered different periods. So a kid could, if they have room in their schedule,
Yep.
take concert choir period 7 and jazz choir period 6, or whenever they're offered. And then you're going to see how those numbers work, and then potentially next year, if one or the other is undersubscribed, you see it potentially being down to one concert/jazz choir. It's like a concert choir, but the jazz choir will
Within
be,
the concert curriculum.
there'll be some jazz curriculum.
What usually happens in that case is that there'll be a day or two of the week that is set aside for that practice. So I remember when I was in choir, Thursdays was jazz choir day, and you'd have standard choir for half the period, and then the smaller ensemble would rehearse. We had 4 or 5 smaller ensembles, but it didn't feel so much like you were on the top or to the side. It felt like we have a concert choir, and then there's a group that stands out from there. But the idea that you could earn a full credit just going to sing, even if you weren't that great, was very appealing to a lot of our students at that time.
I would suspect that schedule will become the bigger factor in what they choose rather than what they want to sing.
Yeah, I think that's a possibility for choir. I don't think that's true for band.
No,
Yeah.
Right.
but I don't think you're going to you'll get data, but I don't think the data will be driven by what you think it is as far as making a choice. You run the risk of making a choice based on schedule convenience rather than content preference.
If you had to push it one way or the other, Tom, which way would you go?
Well, if concert choir incorporates jazz choir, that seems to be, at this level, the more equitable option, and then gives the opportunity to then move on to honors of one or the other or both. I'm thinking of it's more entry-level, introductory, perhaps less sophisticated, less specialization. Just from what you're describing, I don't have a preference. I'm just trying to figure out how you're going to get from point A to point B. I'll leave it at that.
So, and then honors choir there is no honors jazz choir, right? It's just
There's honors
choir.
jazz band.
I know.
And then there's honors concert choir. There's honors choir and then honors jazz
Gotcha.
band. It's a little bit
gotcha.
of
What
a.
happened to there used to be 2 honors choirs.
I don't have.
I think that's what it was every other day, and that's what I was remembering.
Yeah, because when
There are times we've run 2 sections of it. Maybe
no,
that's.
They had different.
They had different things.
Because I remember going to the concerts, and the choir got up, and especially during the holiday season, one would sing sort of classic choral, and others would sing the very jazzy stuff.
So it'd be like a jazz and like a classical grouping.
But that was, so
There was 2
having
separate
kids
groups.
who were in choir recently, yeah, they had, the concert choir would come out, and then the jazz choir would come out, and then the honors choir would come out, and then the a cappella group would come out. So there
Oh, who was the a
were
cappella I'm
multiple
thinking of?
groups.
And that's an extracurricular. They do that all on their own.
Yep.
So are there any other questions on this
Yeah.
program of studies?
Yeah. I don't know.
Are you done, Beth? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Yep,
Yeah,
I got
you go.
everything there.
The first question I have is regarding the Latin honors description, which I think is great, but the information in the profile that talks about academic honors and lists highest honors and honors. I was wondering how the information in the profile relates to.
Oh, that's
what
like
we
honor
do.
roll, yeah.
You give them an honor roll?
Yeah, in the profile, we have academic honors, and it's highest honors and honors, which would be honor roll.
And then below it, it says, you will be recognized using the Latin honors. Should there, is this already completely
Yeah, this is
published
done for
now?
this year, yeah. put next year.
You're saying match the language?
Yeah, or at least,
So the Latin honors is a graduation accomplishment and not necessarily an ongoing recognition, which is different than.
Honor
say,
roll.
I think there would, okay, no, then my request would be, could there be a little bit more clarity put in the profile as to what you offer? Because we've promoted the Latin honors as a meaningful graduation recognition.
Yep.
And it seems to be sort of like a footnote only in the profile. Maybe get some more in there. I have a question about the personal finance aspect. What is the state requirement? I mean, do they just say you have to discuss it, or do they say you have to have a course in personal finance?
We do have a course. Underneath consumer science.
So, we do have that course, but
Is
the,
it required, though?
no. So
I guess the question is, what do we have to give?
we have to teach certain skills that are identified in the law, but it says it can be a separate course, or it can be incorporated into another existing course, such as economics. So it was already part of the curriculum that we teach.
Okay. Because really, just personal finance, from my background, is very different than economics.
Mhm.
And I'm kind of curious how you do personal finance in an economics class. It's just, if it's truly an economics class.
It's an economics class. I would say personal finance is not a good descriptor of what it is that they're asking us to include.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Okay, that's too bad. No, the reason I say it's too bad is I think personal finance is
Valuable.
a very important aspect. I didn't have a say and I didn't play a role in becoming a requirement, but I'm certainly not opposed to it being a state requirement. If you, going forward, can see a way to make that content be, if not mandatory, at least extremely accessible and recommended, that would make me happy. One thing that we didn't talk at all about, because it didn't really get updated, is that CTE stuff. And I know a few people here were in that call that just took place for the region. One thing that became really clear is, at least to me, is that the schools that have the programs are mainly worried about the students that are in those schools. Despite what the law says and the requirement that they cover everybody, their focus on the schedules, on the curriculum, how it relates to everything else, is really geared towards that. And Andy was on the call, we were sort of texting during it. One of the things that he said to me by text was, perhaps we, in order to give advantage to our students in the CTE program, we need to narrow the focus of which partner schools we're working with so that we are sending more students and may have more leverage, because a real big component of success is schedule coordination. And where we have 3 to 4 different regions, it's very difficult for us to have any kind of meaningful sway in what our partner schools do, because we're a very small component. In particular, where we have multiple schools offering the same title, reading the description and stuff, they're not identical, but from a general subject and area of interest, I'm wondering if there would be value in reducing the number of places that we're sending our kids so that we're sending more kids to the places.
We moved in that direction a few years ago. I think we used to go to Messinic, and now we don't.
And Scenic's still listed in there for some of them.
That's
It's not listed
only,
in our program of studies, though.
if
Yeah,
it's,
program studies, yes.
It's not, in other words.
No,
Yeah.
but when you read down, some of the programs actually send the kids to the scenic.
the language that we put in to start that kind of narrowing, for the reasons that you're talking about, those aren't new concerns, but they're just bubbling up as something we should be considering a little more. If a comparable CTE course is offered at both Nashua and Milford, whenever possible and subject to availability, the principal may use discretion to decide which program will be attended by students. That was our first effort to say, let's send a group in one location instead of one here and one here and one here. If there's more movement in that direction, I don't think it would be a bad thing to think about. It does come down to scheduling and availability of the program, so by keeping more available, we do have more kids that can participate, because maybe if you didn't get into this one, there's a spot available over here.
One of the things they said is that they're required to reserve number of spaces, and they're not even coming close to getting those. All the people said, they're not getting the kids.
Okay.
They have to, I think they keep like 25% for their own schools, and they're typically running about 80-85%.
That's correct.
It's a conversation worth having. It definitely is, because our CTE programs are, they feel like more kids are paying attention to them on a school-wide level. More students are looking to that to get them set up for the next phase, especially some of the students who don't see what they want here. They like to reach out and see what our surrounding communities have. It's very popular for some of our students.
We're sending 20 kids to a school. I think it's easier for them to say, let's have the same professional development day. Let's have that sort of thing. Whereas if we've got one kid going in there and another school is sending 20 kids, we don't matter.
Right.
Great, thanks, Tom. Are there any other questions? Everybody asked the questions I had, so we're good. there's a bit of spacing issues in the credit to like 9 to 11 and then 1 credit. So that's
Yeah, I'll take credit for
in
that.
quite a bit of, like that's,
Yeah, you got, the formatting was.
right.
It's always the document to a PDF. Something moves and you try and reopen it and you can't get it. Making it line up is a headache.
And is the
It's
link,
got locked, you know?
when does it get locked in?
When you approve it next
Yeah, that'll be.
Next month?
Yeah.
So we'll make those edits that we discussed.
And then ELO, is that all new language under ELO, or is it just the title under ELO?
A
'Cause that
few
was-
of the
The whole
phrases-
thing wasn't highlighted, it was just the,
Yeah, I don't think we changed anything terribly specific in the
Okay.
wording itself. We looked at the wording around credits to say that it's not a strict equation. It used to be, this is a half credit, this many hours is a full credit. That was the biggest shift, is to make it less tied to exactly how many hours you spend.
and then my only other comment is in the very beginning, I guess I did, not all my questions, in the very beginning of this, when we talk about course placement and teacher recommendations, I brought up last month or a couple months ago, I think if a kid completes a class, passes a class, and and that class is a prerequisite for another class, and there's nothing underneath that class that says that they need a recommendation from a teacher, then that class should be open. The next following subsequent class should be open. But in the course descriptions, we say when a teacher recommendation is required. But in the beginning of this document, we say that teacher recommendations are required for core subjects. So I would just want some clarity on that and I don't think a teacher recommendation should be required. If a kid gets a C in English 10 accelerated and wants to stay in English 9 accelerated and wants to stay in English 10 accelerated or whatever, B minus or whatever it is that we say, that class should be open to them. That's my opinion. Other people can disagree, but I would like some consistency, that's all.
We have a project slated for our program of studies review, because that's a big project to have the different departments. And with
Sure.
two of us, with Yolanda and myself now working with our different departments, we
Okay.
actually have a bigger opportunity I envision a big table
Okay.
and each department and lining out to make
Okay.
sure that those prerequisites are consistent. And I even had to go through and make sure we didn't say department head and department chair.
Right.
So
just
we
fixing
really
that,
want to,
And then also the teacher recommendation piece, which is in the beginning but doesn't really follow through.
Yep.
So it's okay, it's just something that I'd like to see cleaned up.
it's a project we have put on
Great.
the to-do list.
Fantastic.
Just a follow-up, if we're going to be asked to vote on this
Next month.
is there any opportunity and appetite to look at consolidation of CTE classes for next year?
For next month?
So removing certain schools from the offerings?
Potentially, yeah.
It tends to take time for us to get communication and information from the programs, and I think we'd need more. Say that again? No, to just get the information we would need to figure out where it would make sense to send our students. I think a month turnaround would be hard for us to get the information from the receiving programs to make a thoughtful choice about that.
I think there are also some programs that are more desirable than others, and so I would not,
Desirable to
The students.
to the students, because they leave with something that makes them employable versus an experience that they maybe want to go into that field or maybe decided they don't want to. But if you leave with the certificate in hand, I always talk about the health sciences one because you walk away as an LNA and you are fully employable and you can continue your studies but you have quite a few options. So some of those programs are more popular, and if we limit anything, then we always have more students who are interested and apply than get accepted. So I would.
So don't limit that one, but there are some that I know we're not oversubscribing to.
Yep.
That are not certificates. Just, is there any willingness to even look at it, or am I wasting my breath?
Tom, I'd be interested in looking at it, but what not the turnaround sounds.
I think you're asking two questions.
Yeah.
Is there an appetite to do it, and is there an appetite to get it done by next month? I think the answer is yes and no.
Exactly.
Yes, people have an appetite to do it, but no, people want to take more time to process it and come up with it before next month.
I asked this last year, and nothing happened. Well, I do.
I believe you.
That's
Okay.
the sense I got.
So I'm wasting my breath, thank you.
Okay.
Because we're gonna be at the same place next year.
Well, we'll share one piece. When we did eliminate one of the locations, and it was the year that we invested in the vans. And so then when we went to do the van scheduling, we had too many students going to one location, and we had to send 2 vans to the same location.
Well, if you're going to 2 locations, you need 2 vans anyway.
No, I know, but, so then we ended up replacing it with a bus, which was sort of defeated the purpose of so I'm just saying that there's a lot.
Just the 3, right now?
We just have the 3 locations. I
Yeah.
can't find Messinic in here.
So it's under
But-
Milford. The language
Yeah.
still exists under Milford, but when we send students to Milford, they're in Milford. The 3 schools right now that we send to are,
Milford,
I shouldn't say
Allen, and
schools, I
Nashua.
should say districts.
Milford,
Nashua.
Allen, and Nashua.
So, and all 3 are currently well subscribed. To remove certain options would be, I understand the kind of, the bigger picture in making maybe a better program, but at the end of the day, we would potentially be removing options for that next sophomore who's interested in that thing at Milford or at Nashua South, so to remove one of those receiving schools from.
Were you on that, policy? I knew you
No,
were last year.
we were in a leadership.
Because what you're saying is hypothetically true, but based on current situation, the schools are looking for additional enrollment. They are having difficulty, and several of them I know are trying to find ways to recruit so that they don't lose the programs. The problem is not enough. See, there's guaranteed positions for outside schools, but the scheduling conflicts are preventing many students who want to go from going. So they become, if they're not subscribed by tuition in schools, then they can fill positions within their own district. What you're describing is technically a risk. And if we got to a position where we were using up all the positions allotted and we had more kids and wanted to go, I'd say, great, open up another place, find a secondary location.
It's just not the same, it's not necessarily the same offerings at every school.
Right, and if somebody wants a certain teacher for English, but it can't fit their schedule, they go into a different English class. We can't have a perfect situation where it's not the same program, but the result is they don't get any program because the schedule conflicts are too great. There are more kids not using CTE because they can't make it work with their schedule, than there are kids who are going to lose it because it's not the program they want. That's my opinion, and it's not based on just, I'm guessing. I've been watching where the enrollments are going, not just here, but in general, and it's just not happening because it's a scheduling problem.
You mean the calendar scheduling though, like the professional days and the,
It's
or
the days, and it's also got to do with
the
things
4
like
hours.
start times
Yeah.
and all that.
Yeah, I think what Tom is hitting on is accurate from the standpoint of the state has reached out and said we need to do a better job of making this more accessible for students. And superintendent started that work a year ago and probably took it, say, from 40 conflicts of the master calendar down to 20 because of early release days and all of those things. We have some districts that start 10 days before Labor Day and some districts who start after Labor Day. So there's a host of issues that are there. And as a result, some of the vocational components are undersubscribed. Now, we've done a pretty good job getting our kids into a number of places, but to Tom's point, when you're on those calls, as a non-CTE center, we're looking for some sort of leverage to be able to provide what we can provide for our children. Because again, if I'm one of the CTE centers and nobody comes over from Hollis, Brookline, all I do is sign kids up that are in my own building. So I'm not losing anything. So it's kind of, we're looking for more of the leverage at the bigger discussion, to Tim's point, than the nitty-gritty. Like trying to fit a child's English classes in once in a while is difficult because they're going to CTE for this block and all of that. So we've started some discussions for the first time ever. Well, if there was that type of conflict, could they not just take the English at the school they're going to? Because if it's my passion that I want to go over to a certain CTE program, and I could just start the day in a English class there and then go right into CTE, would that be better? So the conversations are changing, but as Tom will tell you, because he was on the call, it's very frustrating because they own the building. And it's not as flexible as maybe I think the state would like to see it, because again, it's funded through Perkins money, which is federal money, and we need to maintain services to continue that funding. And when your overall student population is going down in your state, you're already catching an issue. So I agree with the yes and no. I think we need to take a look at this and continue those discussions because they're looking for Hollis Brookline to sign on to another 10 or 15-year agreement. And prior to Tim and with Rick, we haven't been willing to do that because we're not getting enough in a contract yet to say, yeah, we'll sign on the line. So that's where, Tom is echoing that. So I think that, when we look at the program of studies, we move forward with this year. But I think in terms of the next couple of discussions coming up for calendar and that, we have to beat the drum a little louder on the calls from people like myself and some of the non-CTE centers. Because you also have some districts choosing to go to centers that are not their center. So towns have just decided we're going to go to this center even though we're supposed to go to Manchester. So it's really kind of a bigger issue that I'd say 2 or 3 years, Tom, has started real discussions. And as somebody who sits on the calls and Tom's on them, it gets very frustrating because at times it feels like we're not going places, but we are making progress. And it's that balancing act between, I don't want to hurt a child who's sitting in our classes now, but I want CTE to be better for the child who's sitting in sixth grade in either Hollis or Brookline when they get to the high school.
Thanks, Andy. So it's a larger conversation that'll take some time.
Yeah.
But if there's more passion behind it, it sounds like, at this point,
Yeah, and I mean, Tom
than
has
there was
been,
last year.
I mean, I give Tom credit because Tom has attended wearing two hats, school board hat of Hollis Brookline Cooperative, and he's on the Milford Advisory Board for it. So
And we
he's,
appreciate that.
he sees it from two different angles, which has been very helpful. And I think it's caused some people to pause because not many people in the room are wearing those two hats.
I think if we make sure that the conversation isn't tied to our program of studies review point, that might make it so you don't feel like we discuss it once and then we don't do it again until we pull up the program of studies. If it can be made a separate topic, then the time you're looking for and the discussion can happen, so
Yeah, I
it's
mean,
not
even
in a
like
month.
a small subcommittee of people in the building who can, a building, you know.
I appreciate that, and I mean, I understand your viewpoint. I have brought this up at multiple meetings here, and that's why I was hoping to see something different this year when it came out. So when it came out and it's the same,
You're frustrated.
that's why
Yep.
the discussion is happening tonight, and I apologize for blindsiding you with it.
No, you didn't. Blindside.
Fair. Ladies, any comments on the program of studies? These are all the courses that are offered to you in your classes at your high school career. Any comments? It's okay, I'm putting you on the spot. You are totally okay to say, I'm good, we'll think about it, and we'll add to it next month if we want to.
I think the one thing was, you mentioned like the difficulty between scheduling, because I originally did want to go to Alvern to do the JRTC, but I wasn't able to because of my scheduling course. I was choosing to take some courses that I wanted to more, but either way, like there are like, I know there's a multitude of like some of my peers that has been the issue for them. Like they can't take it because even though they want to.
Okay, thank you for that. Thanks so much. All right, and you guys are, the rest of is there anything else on this program
don't
of
think
studies
so.
at this point? It'll come up next week, next month. Guys, the rest of this is probably something that you can stay for, but you're welcome to go home if you'd like to as well. Or go elsewhere. I mean, hopefully
field
home.
hockey.
Your parents would say, go home.
Go watch the
Jump-
field hockey.
Yeah, field hockey
Go watch the
started,
field
so
hockey, yeah.
tell us how
That's
they're
at
doing.
Text
7:23.
updates.
Yes.
Yeah.
Keep us informed.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I assume the reason the profile's on there is we've already covered that, right?
Right,
Rick,
right. Yep, we
Tim,
did.
sorry.
Yep.
Rick, Tim.
Yep.
All right, so articles of agreement, is that just the update?
Yep. I just want to give the board a quick update. Probably over the last 18 months to 2 years, we spent quality time on the articles of agreement. So working with council, we put in the board packet the latest, most up-to-date information, which includes the final order from the State Board of Education from July 14th, 2022, the current articles of agreement as certified by the State Board, a copy of the October 5th, 2021 special meeting warrant, the certification of the posting of the warrant, the evidence that it was published in the newspaper, and then the minutes from October 5th, 2021, the district special meeting, including voting results. So what will happen now is these articles, which have been updated, will be posted on the website, and they will be the guidelines that we will follow until either we receive a citizen's petition or the board were to decide to do something different and take action that would amend the articles of agreement. So I want to thank everybody who was involved. There were quite a few board members who were involved in this process. All of us spent an extra night out at the district special meeting to get this adopted. But it really is important, and I really commend everybody for their work. And I think, I also just want to mention, there was some bills at the state level that would make co-ops illegal and would be disbanded by 2024. Those bills were all put together in a group of 3, and they went back to be reviewed, and they have formulated a study committee to look at cooperatives. I will be serving on that committee, representing our 2 communities, because I think although we sometimes have differences, these articles of agreement demonstrate our willingness to come together and work together, and the results that you see in Tim's profile, I think sometimes the conversations we have that are difficult to have lead to outstanding results. So just because something is difficult doesn't mean it shouldn't be done. So I'll be representing us, but I do want you to know this new information that Jim has provided will go on the website for the two communities to be able to review.
Andy, do you know offhand when the 5-year increment hits?
I think there's 3 more. I think we're in year 2. Yep. And the 5-year increment is the requirement to look at the formula.
The minimum.
Right,
Minimum, but we don't have to do it.
right.
But I'm trying to figure out whether I'm gonna have to deal with it again.
Always.
Well, you could be like Tom down there, who didn't think he was gonna be dealing with some things, and then all of a sudden you're back. So you never know what's gonna happen, you know?
We'll just rope you back in.
Yeah.
Okay.
And with the board chair's permission, I'll turn it over to
Yes,
Linda,
please.
who will walk us through revenue and expense for 2 years.
All right, so ending June 30th, our FY22 year, we had our audit in August, and our year ended up first looking at the expenses out of a $26.2 million budget in expenses. We have a $1.9 million that we did not spend. So some key points on that are things that really I've been bringing up all year: unfilled positions, unpaid leaves for salaries, lane changes, which is when a teacher goes, for example, from a bachelor's to a master's degree, not happening, which were in the budget. We had unfilled coaching positions, unfilled advisor stipends, professional development funds not being used, unfilled maintenance positions, and of course, everywhere there's a salary involved, there's corresponding savings in taxes, insurance, and retirement. So that's across the board, but really, the key driver of this 1.9 million is 1.2 million of that was special education. And when Kelly presented to the Budget Committee, she made a little primary drivers behind the scene spreadsheet where out of that 1.2 million for special ed, part of that was transportation, part of that was students moving out of the district, of students declining services, program changes, unfilled positions, just across the board. So large balance, 1.9 million, but let's look at the revenue side now, and then we'll put it all together. On the revenue side, out of the budget, we had a savings of $364,000 in it over budget that we got in excess of what we budgeted. Really, half of that $364,000 was coming from federal grants, and the other half came from, if you remember, we had a health trust surplus refund of about $180,000 from our health trust vendor, who was our health and dental provider. So if you put the expense balance with the revenue balance, it brings us to the unreserved fund balance of 1.9 million. And then if we take out the maintenance trust, 200,000, the special ed trust, 25,000, and the retained fund balance of 188,000, that brings us down to 1.5 million, going back to the taxpayers by reducing the tax rate. So that is how we ended up FY22 fiscal year. Are there any questions on that? No. Okay. Let's move on to the current FY23. So this is as of October the 12th. So the story here is we still have vacancies, and we still have people on unpaid leaves, and we still have savings in benefits corresponding to those things happening on the savings side. On the negative side, we have an increase in electric, oil, gas, diesel fuel. Putting it all together right now, out of the $27.6 million budget, we are showing that we're not going to spend $487,000. But I will caution everybody, of course, this is the first quarter and so much can change during the year. On the revenue side, at this point, because it's so early, we're just saying the budget is what we're planning. So we're not showing any excess or decrease in the revenue side. So if we fund $200,000 to our maintenance trust and $25,000 to our special ed trust and $188,000 to our retained fund balance, again for FY '24, it would give us a projected fund balance right now of $73,662. And I think that is all I had to say about FY '23. So are there questions on FY '23?
The only question I have, in the explanation of the balances, you have 38,000 and change for the press box stairs and platform. I thought that, is there an offsetting revenue from donations from, I don't know if it came in through Elevates or separately on that?
So Tom's referring to on that first page under site improvements, that $38,000. And that, I don't know the answer to that, if there's an offset to that.
Yeah, I'll have to check with Kelly on that and get back to you.
Well, those are site improvements, right?
Right, because I'm not sure it's just what encompasses the 38.
Yeah, because
Yep.
and if it is, then, I mean, that's something that we could see whether Elevates has money on it.
Yep. Okay. I will check.
Any other questions on the fiscal year 2022-23 first quarter revenue and expense report?
So we are sending $1.5 million back to the taxpayer.
That we are. It's about 5%. And when you think what we do our budget now for 18 months from now, we're within 5% of what we thought. And out of the 1.5, 1.2 is the special ed piece, which is always very volatile. I mean, we could have a student move in tomorrow, and that could be hundreds of thousands, or vice versa, we could have a student move out tomorrow, and that could result in a huge savings.
And I did want to really bring home the point that that FY '22 budget was submitted in April 2021. So if you think about it, from April 2021 all the way to June 2022, a lot happens.
Oh,
And
yeah.
and it's, you know, we,
No, I'm not being
Yeah.
critical, I'm
I made a
Cleaning it out.
stink at a previous meeting about feeling that it was very important in a year when we have a windfall of reduced special ed, that we give that back, and there was concern that we would get close, but maybe not. We are exceeding that.
Right.
And that is not going unnoticed, and it will not go unheralded.
Yeah, there we go, excellent.
And I want to, well, we're there, we're already starting on the FY '24, and two pieces that have come up. The Budget Committee does want us to look at either our unreserved fund balance line or a contingency line, because they are just worried about as the budget grows, if one or two things go wrong capital-wise, there's not a lot in reserves. And number two, we will probably see some savings in special ed with children aging out of our programs, as well as simply having the programs. For those of you who are not aware, Crotchet Mountain up north, in the last couple of weeks has closed. So there are many students returning to districts who need programming, need staffing, and have all those costs, because just like we're having trouble staffing, so are places like that. So a lot of these in-house programs, and when the high school brings up the fact that we're bringing NEC to the high school, which was a middle school program, that means more children stay in district and get better services, in my humble opinion. So there's a concerted effort, and we're going to work with the Budget Committee on, do we look at the increasing the percentage of retained fund balance, or do we go back to the old contingency? How do we approach that? You know, the other nice part at the co-op is we made some really nice progress on our capital improvements pieces, because while still managing to give back the surplus to the taxpayers to offset the taxes, we've been able to catch up on some of our maintenance projects in terms of parking and paving and a bunch of those type of things. You know, our roofs, I think I want to say Phase 4 Roof 8 section is this year, and I know it sounds crazy, but that I think is one of our last sections out of what was 2.5 million 4 or 5 years ago, and we're paid as we go. And the other advantage you get is 25 years from now, you're not having to do the whole roof again. You can approach it in sections.
So I have a question about the Budget Committee and the Special Ed Trust. Like, we've kind of, we're at the point where we've kind of maxed out what they had always recommended that
Right.
we're at like 250, right, with our last 25.
Right.
So is there any conversation about needing to make that continue to build?
We are going to look at that because of this, the rate. Special ed costs are mandated in the state, they can only go up by 5% per year. But there are very few places that we do have students placed that do not go up by at least a 5%. With that said, just so you're aware, we've had some staffing changes around special ed. So right now, we have about 5 or 6 children who are out of district that are being overseen by a staff member at the high school. So Lauren can assist with special ed services over in Brookline because that administrator has decided to move on and take a new position. And this is the other piece we're going to see that would never happen years ago, is people leaving at different times of the year. You know, you used to get a contract and be all excited you had a contract, and now what you're seeing is, you know, there are advertisements all over Ed Jobs New Hampshire, you know, and some people looking just more getting closer to home, better quality of life, those type of pieces. So there's a little shift going on in that, and we'll have a further update next month, but we believe we'll be able to cover all our mandated requirements. We have, you will all know Bob Ouellette. Bob Ouellette is part-time now over in Brookline, helping out as an administrator to help with some administrative duties. And we have a retired Hollis teacher who was, for many, many years, a wonderful special ed teacher / administrator, who's coming back on a part-time basis to do preschool and kindergarten special ed, just as we balance this out, because it's going to be very difficult to find people in the coming months.
So are people breaking contract?
Yes and no. I mean, most of the administrative contracts, they have 60 days' notice, so they're not breaking the contract.
So these are not professional staff contracts?
Well, you have that too, but if you talk to Tom Clausen, he'll tell you it's just like any other industry. It's just sufficient notice, and they're gone. It's not, you used to be able to say to people you weren't going to release them from their contract. That really is a moot point at this time.
Is it a two-way street?
No, never is.
Thank you for that summary.
Okay.
Thanks a lot. All right, so at this point, we'll move on to deliberations.
No, we have to go
No?
back to
Oh, I'm sorry.
Tim for
Youth.
his update on the
Sorry.
youth risk behavior.
Thank you. See, you're still on top of things.
So we received notification of the youth risk behavior survey. If you recall, you know, it was, we talked about this last year. It's supposed to be every other year. With COVID, it got pushed to last year, would have been the year prior. I think we were discussing the possibility of administering it again this coming spring. So Andy and I had talked today about potentially doing that. We wanted to give you guys notification that this was something that was being considered, and if there was a conversation that you wanted to have around it, give you advance notice so we can have that conversation in November.
Is that the one where we had to discard results
Yes.
because of the notification issue?
That's
So
correct.
when's the last time we actually submitted one?
Before Tim's time?
Yeah.
2019, I think right before 2020, right?
Yep.
And it was, didn't it used to be done in the fall? Or has it always been the spring?
I don't want to say always, but
Yeah.
I think it's a spring.
yeah, it's a spring.
Yeah.
So
And-
it's 4 years.
Yeah, and I asked him to bring it up tonight because I wanted to alert the board that we're discussing options. Tim and Brian and other administrators and staff members have done a lot more of reaching out to our students through various means. You know, we have a captain's group now for athletics, we have National Honor Society, we have Student Council, and we're just trying to determine, is there a better way to find out what our kids need than taking a survey that some of the questions I don't think are valid, and some of the questions concern us. So we're going to be working over the next month to bring back, well, I'll say, a couple recommendations for the board to consider around this, because where Tim came from, and I've talked to the superintendent up there in Bow, they had what I'll call a leadership retreat, where they attracted a very diverse group of students across their high school population. And they met during the summer and kind of talked about all of these areas and where they wanted to focus as a school. Now, prior to Tim, Rick did a really nice job of taking out pieces of data and making that our focal point. So you might recall, we spent years where around proms, we had the police come in with the goggles and all of that around drunk driving. We did prescription drugs was an emphasis at one year. So there's a variety of different things that can happen. We're just wondering if we can tailor it more to meet the needs of the Hollis and Brookline students and use some of our own expertise in the community, which we have quite a bit of, in terms of if we know we want X, Y, and Z to be offered, I'm sure we can find X, Y, and Z through our community or resources that we have. So
So does participating in the survey allow you access to resources that you wouldn't have otherwise?
the participating in the resources assists some of the, I'll say, the private vendors or groups that utilize that data to apply for grants that put on programming. But a lot of times we are, because of where we sit, that programming might say, come through the Nashua Boys and Girls Club.
Right.
And we're not going there, or the Milford Boys and Girls Club. They're always welcoming, and we take advantage of any program that is great, but we don't necessarily have a hub in our town. So it's more, just want to take a really good view, and then we'll make whatever decision or recommendation we think is best and let the board tell us where they'd like to see us go.
Participation is optional? I thought it was required.
No, it's optional. We have to opt in. The only thing we won't get is we wouldn't get back the data, but we would come up with a new way of gathering the data of what our focal points would be based on our student population.
I know in the past, it's been touted that one of the benefits is the benchmarking aspect of seeing
Yep.
where we fit relative to others, so
Yep.
it gives you context
Yep.
for things.
Yep. Yep.
Do you have concerns about losing that?
I do, and that's why we may look at two components. We might recommend that we participate in the study, but that how we utilize the study is based on our students internally. Because what happens a lot of times is the study gets publicized, the grants go out, and then the programming that's set up may not be an issue that we have.
Right.
Because our students make up, a small population of the overall study.
What's the downside of participation?
I think there are always some concerns around confidentiality. I think there are questions that if I put on my dad hat concern me, not so much as as school administrator and not so, from the vantage point of how we use the data, but just if it was my son or daughter taking the test. I'll be honest, there are some questions that I know Tim and I sit there and go, I don't necessarily like that question. I understand why that question's there, but also remember that our demographics are different. We are a small town compared to a big city like Nashua, a big city like Manchester, yet we fall into those same kind of large groupings. So that's why we wanted to bring it forward, to kind of tell you our concerns, and then let us have a discussion next month after Tim and I have had what we'll say quality time to digest it, because it just came in yesterday.
An email from the state.
The email from the state which says that you're going to participate in the spring, so we'll need to get that back after our November meeting.
Is there any chance that, what's the best way for us to look at what the questions are? There used to be a website with it.
Yeah, there's a link. I can get it to you.
Yeah.
I'll send it out.
Yeah, I think that'd be a valuable piece if everybody could take, or it's lengthy, so maybe Tim, we even send it out and just ask people to look at sections. If you have time to look at the whole thing, that's great, but if we assigned everybody, questions 1 to 20, 20 to 40, it
Well,
might
if
just,
kids have to take the whole thing, we can read the whole thing.
you sure?
Yeah.
I just know that there are other things going on in your lives. Yeah, yeah.
They have to sit and do it. I was just gonna say, I think the pattern I've noticed when it's been reported on is that the survey confirms what we already knew. So, but sometimes we need that, because we have folks out in the community who don't believe us necessarily, or I don't want to say they believe us, but when we say our kids are we're seeing signs of increased anxiety among our student population, it's nice to be able to say, and the Youth Risk Behavior Survey, it supports it. It supports those statements when we have concerns. And we, principals and administration makes decisions about staffing and whatever based on some of those concerns. So I would hate to lose the data point that this community likes, in that we like that kind of data. But I do think it generally says, yeah, we know our kids are, it's confirming stuff that I think people who are in the buildings and the teachers and the people who live with those kids kind of know already. So I'd love to hear more about it.
Yep, we'll give a good chunk of time next month.
Great, a good chunk of time on the Youth Risk Behavior Survey. Excellent. Everybody get prepared. Take it yourself, see how risky your life is. Okay, any other questions on that? That's all you want to do on that one? Okay, so now can I move to deliberations?
Yes, ma'am, thank you.
Deliberations to see what action the board will take regarding the administration's recommendation to adjust the school calendar regarding voting day in March. So should we make the motion, or do you want to talk about it first?
I think you can make the motion in a second, and then we can just,
Okay.
Gino, give a
So
quick
I
update.
need a motion to amend the 2022-2023 school calendar by changing the March early release date from March 7th to March 14th, 2023.
So
Moved by Beth. I need a second.
Second.
Second by Kate.
Okay.
And then we need some discussion on this.
All right, so it was an error in putting the date on the March 7th. It was intended to be put on the voting day, and I just made a mistake, and we realized it. So we would the other two boards have already moved it. We would just want to move it to the March 14th, as CSDA became quite cluttered at dismissal time. That's when sort of voting sort of starts to hit a peak, and buses are trying to get out. Then it just made sense if we had an early release on that day.
So we already have the early release scheduled for the 7th.
For the 7th. Correct.
14th. Are there any questions or comments on this? Do you have a question or a comment on this?
Are they going to be voting in our schools?
Yes.
They are voting at the high school on November 8th and CSDA on November 8th. On March.
Top schools.
What's that?
In March.
I thought they voted Lawrence.
Not the November 8th, but March might be at the barn.
Right. What'll happen is we'll get,
March is usually at the barn.
yeah, unless it's,
It's just to keep the calendars for the 3 districts,
Oh, so it's
and
just.
they voted CSDA.
Okay, I'm gonna call the vote. All those in favor? 7-0-0, motion passes.
I know you're rushing it through, but.
I'm not rushing, I just,
Early release.
yes.
How
I just don't think there's a lot to talk about.
I thought that they closed the school on those days.
We closed the school on November 8th, which is
Yeah.
the big day. And then what we have found is there's not that much traffic. But where the problem lies is if you have normal bus dismissal, for whatever reason, that seems to be a peak voting time, and it's a major snafu.
It's worse than lunchtime?
Yeah,
Yeah,
because the buses aren't trying to get out of
Yeah.
Orange.
Because you have
Oh,
buses,
they
you have
are.
carpool, and you have voters.
No, but I would have thought there'd be more voters at lunchtime than there would be at mid-afternoon.
No, you have a lot of parents who are doing carpool and then hopping over to vote, so then you have just no place to put everybody.
Okay, so, but that's, wait. I need a report out from the process observer, and then we're gonna go into non-public.
Oh, Holly was really good at checking her right off, going down the line. I think we had a good discussion on the program studies. Thank you, Amanda, for doing all the work on that. And I think that Tom's right. I think it would be nice to have some updates on the CTE stuff around other times than programming. But other than that, we're finished ahead of time.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Cindy. At this point, I need to make a motion. We need to make a motion.
We're going to non-meeting, aren't we?
no,
Well, No,
non-public.
it's non-public.
Oh, it's not public? Oh.
And the reason why is we're going to be discussing a contractual CBA issue, but the board could decide to take an action. If you're a
Oh, you're right,
non-meeting, you
you're
can't
right,
take
you're
an
right.
action.
So is this A then?
Yes.
All right, so I need a motion that the board by roll call go into non-public session pursuant to RSA 91-A:3 2A, the dismissal, promotion, or compensation of any public employee. Moved by Tom, seconded by Beth, and now I need a roll call vote. I'm sorry.
Tom, aye?
Cindy, I.
Krista, I.
Holly, aye.
Beth, I.
Kate, aye.
Okay, so we are now in non-public at 7:51, and if anybody's watching, we will go straight into an adjournment after that, so.
And we're going to use the special ed conference room.
Can I make some quick copies of that?